There we go. Okay, well, welcome along. I'm going to take a bit of a guess about why you might be here tonight. So I'm going to guess that you probably think you want to share Jesus as you think you should, but you either think you're no good at it or you're not quite sure about it and you want to get started, or you're already doing it, you feel pretty confident, but you want to learn a new way or you want to see a different way of doing things. Either way, we've got some good stuff in for you tonight, so hope it's helpful for you. And you're certainly not alone. So last year, or I'd probably actually expand these are old slides. Over the last year, we've trained 400 different people around Australia using this online sort of format, 1 hour. And there are 300 non-Christians meeting with a Christian friend around Australia each week, reading the Bible. So be encouraged. This is something that people come to and then go away and start actually sharing with their friends. So what we hope you'll walk away with tonight are the basic ingredients to share Jesus confidently with a friend. Not claiming that you'll walk away with everything you'll ever need to know. You won't have to do an evangelist course ever again, but this is just the basic ingredients to get started. So what we're going to look at tonight, we're going to look at the big picture, who's our neighbours, metaphorically speaking, around Australia, and are they even interested in the Bible at all? How to use the word one-to-one, the actual booklets themselves and what they are. What makes sharing Jesus so good? We're going to hear a whole bunch of stories about people who are doing the word one-to-one. It's usually a really encouraging time. We're going to think about how to ask our friends to do it with us, and there's going to be some time for extra stories and Q&A at the end. I'm a bit of a stickler for time, so we always finish at 8:30 on the dot. But I always stick around if you've got more questions. I'm online as long as you want me to be. Let's kick on. A social commentator named Stephen McAlpine said this: "Our Australian culture has rarely been more hostile towards the gospel, but at the same time, it has rarely been more open." So we have this sort of interesting paradox going on. And we see that in the stats as well. So in the census data, we see more and more people saying, no religion, I don't follow a God, I'm sort of just a bit agnostic. But at the same time, we see, interestingly, more people are willing to talk about Christianity, talking about Jesus, and talking about God things. So you have this paradox. People are not identifying, but at the same time, there's more interest growing. So what does that mean for us? We'll get to that in a minute. I think there's a part of the Bible that looks at this really, really well. So it's in John 4. It's the Samaritan woman at the well. I'll read out a bit of John 4 now. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink? Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." A little while later, Jesus is talking with his disciples, and he says this to them. He says, "I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest." So a couple of commentators will look at this passage and will look at our society and say, maybe that's kind of like where people are at right now, is they've been told by the world you can find satisfaction and happiness and fulfillment in all sorts of places. Maybe that's career or work or financial security, experiences, travel, whatever the world might be. No vaccine mandates, I don't know. There's all sorts of ways people go to find fulfillment. But they sort of end up finding that they're empty wells. They don't satisfy. They have to keep going back to drink more and more. And I think we see that in our world today, is these people becoming a little bit discontented. Majoritively, when we ask our Bible sharers across Australia, why do you think your non-Christian friends are reading with you? The response we get is because they're looking for something more. They're not quite satisfied with what's going on, what's happening in their life. They're not satisfied with what the world's giving them. They're looking for something more. So I wonder if Jesus came to our workplaces and our neighbourhoods, our universities, or wherever you happen to be, whether Jesus would look around and say, look, these fields are ripe with a harvest of people who are keen to learn more. But tonight is not going to be just me talking at you. we're going to have a lot of interactivity. So I'm going to start that off with a bit of a poll. Now, in the past, we've used a web thing called Slido, but I'm experimenting with polls that are built into Zoom tonight. So let me open up and see if it works. I'm going to chuck up one question and see if you guys can see that. Okay, has a poll popped up? Okay, give it an answer. I realise our Tasmanian girls are going to heavily skew the vote. Do you want to unmute yourselves and we can talk through that?
Oh, so I thought we were going to do something weird on our phones, but do we just tell you?
Yeah, well, yes, it was going to be something weird.
We've ruined everything, have we?
Oh, it's the worst.
I'm quite lucky that the CEO of the company that I work for is a Christian. So one of the co-owners of the business is a Christian. So even though we're still the minority in the organisation, it's quite normal for us to be like, oh, how was church? And for it to come up quite organically. So I'm actually just really, really lucky, I think, in that regard. But yeah.
Is that totally comfortable?
Totally. I wouldn't say, I would say that I'm still almost totally uncomfortable. Sorry. I'm very, very lucky, yet I'm still totally uncomfortable sharing. But I still do, so.
Well, actually, that's a good answer, and that helps me think maybe a good way of polling is like a thumbs up, sort of totally uncomfortable, totally comfortable, and somewhere in between. So what about you, Mitch? Where do you sort of fit? If you're thinking, I'm guessing you're going to be at school and you got some friends.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, comfortable.
Yeah, comfortable.
I tell people about God all the time. Still, I still feel like I can't think of the right word, but still drop the ball sometimes. Like someone says, what did you do on the weekend? And sometimes I'll lead with church and sometimes I don't, but just make it part of the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, good one. I think I still feel maybe uncomfortable, maybe not totally uncomfortable. We're running a big workshop series at a church in Sydney right now, and I was convicted while I was encouraging everybody else to go and ask all their friends to read the Bible. I realised that I hadn't in a while, and it's because I felt a bit uncomfortable. So it was a good opportunity for me to push myself as well. So yeah, definitely. Okay, let's go to the next question. This is new tech we're using tonight, so this is a bit of a dry run. Let's go to the next question. Okay, maybe type this in the chat. Might be a good way that we can all contribute at once. So in the past, how have you mostly shared Jesus with your colleagues, friends, and family? Chuck it in the chat. Lending books, classic. Fighting to read the Bible. Convos. Invite to an event. All over the place. That's good. Good diversity of style. Help in a rough time. Yeah, that'll come up later tonight as well. I think it's a pretty big thing. What we see is people who become Christians through reading the Bible with a friend. The Bible's done a lot of heavy work, but often you'll see other things happening at the same time. So, they've been reading the Bible and they did a course at church, or they read a book, or they, usually it's the Bible and something else working together, a lot of things working together. So all these are great. Good one. Okay, next one, and then we'll move on. And what are the common challenges that you face? Feel free to chuck this in the chat as well. So I'm worried my friend might say no. I'm worried my friend might be offended. What do I say, or where do I go in the Bible? And what if I can't answer their questions? I feel like my friend thinks Christianity is irrelevant. Would it be awkward to talk about God or read the Bible? I never seem to get the opportunity to talk about God, or there's never been any barriers for me, or there's something else challenging. Feel free to chuck it in the chat.
I'll chuck it in the chat. I've hit submit polls. Now I can't see the questions. So
Oh.
there's something to think about.
Polls are okay. This is good. We used to use Slido. I reckon we might go back to it because it does work better if you've got lots of people on one Zoom.
And also just interesting, once you hit submit, it's gone. I can't see where to find it again.
Okay.
So
I'm
you
worried.
might want to note that down.
Yeah.
Go back to Slido.
Okay, this is purely for me to extract information from all of you. That's
Oh.
that's Zoom's intent, I think. Okay, so I'm worried my friend might say no. I'm worried my friend might be offended, and I don't think my friend needs Jesus. Mitch feels the middle three options. So is that where do I say or go? How do I answer tough questions? And I don't feel trained enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll be a bit different tonight, Mitch.
Yeah.
And not knowing the person's previous experiences with religion. Yeah, it's a big one. Worried you'll have an agenda. Okay. These are all great things. I'm sure we'll chat more about them as tonight goes by. Good one. Okay, well, we'll come back to this stuff, and if I don't bring up something that's a burning question or a burning challenge, bring it up at the end, and we'll make sure we chat about it. Okay, good one. Let's dive in now. So, what actually is the word one-to-one? Well, very simply, it's the Gospel of John with some notes to help guide conversation. That's all it is. The Gospel of John with some notes to help guide a conversation. You'll see the insides of the book in a minute and see how that works. But picture this for me for a moment. You've invited your friend to read the Bible with you, and they've said yes. Very exciting. You've booked a time at a cafe that you're going to go and read, or maybe you've booked a time to go to their home. You've got your bevies in hand. What happens next? You've got your bevy in hand. What happens next? Okay, well, this is what you'll see when you open the pages of the word one-to-one. So the word one-to-one breaks the Gospel of John into 38 chunks called episodes. So Gospel of John, 38 tiny little chunks called episodes. And each episode starts with a title page. It's got a title and verse. So the start of John's Gospel is God came to earth. John 1:1-18. And a bit of an introduction as well. That's what it says. In this episode, John's eyewitness account starts with an overview. You might find this a surprising start. We don't begin with the baby Jesus and his famous birth. There is no stable, no angels, no Bethlehem, but rather some massive claims. So don't be surprised if it will need some unpacking. Other episode introductions also have a map on them, so it shows, if there's a story happening, it'll show you where that story happens on the map to help it feel like it's a real place. It's happening in history. Now this next page, this is really the meat of the word one-to-one. So if you pick up a word one-to-one booklet, most of the pages will look like this. On the left-hand side, you've got the verses of John. And on the right-hand side, you've got some notes to help guide conversation. Now the notes are structured with questions, but not just questions. So the question here is, what was the response when the light came? It's not just got that, it's got answers as well. So it says, the world did not recognize its creator. And born a Jew, even his own people rejected him. So that's the flow. You've got verses on one side, and you've got some notes that help explain it on the other. Now, you might think questions and answers are a little bit strange, particularly if you've grown up in church. Every good Bible study has nice open-ended questions, and surely if you had answers there, it would kill conversation. But really, that's one of the key things that we think sets the word one-to-one apart, is we don't want to put our friend on the spot. We really want it to be not intimidating at all, just really easy. So they look, they can read it, they can understand it, and there's nothing that's expected of them. Now, you might be thinking, how does this work? We're in a cafe, they've got a book, I've got a book. Are we reading it out loud? Are we reading it in our head? How does it work? It's really up to you. So we find different people will prefer different things. So if you think your friend's going to appreciate reading it out loud, feel free to do that. If you think it's going to be better to read in your head, that's okay as well. So what you'll do is you'll open up, you'll read the verses, you'll read the notes, and at the end of each page, you ask, did anything stand out to you? What I like about this question, is your friend is welcome to say, no, nothing stood out to me, and you're welcome to move on to the next page. And usually that's what we find. In the first couple of pages, particularly if your friends never looked at the Bible before, it's all pretty new. And they're just sort of taking it all in, soaking it all in. So sometimes as a Christian, it's easy to feel like you're doing something wrong if your friend's like, no, nothing stood out to me, let's keep moving. Don't worry about that. We see it all the time. What we usually find is by the end of the episode, so many different things are standing out to them. It's really engaging. If you're skeptical, let me give you an encouraging stat. What we find is 80% of people who go through the first chunk of John's Gospel, the first episode, 80% are willing to come back and give it a second go. So whether your friend's engaging verbally or whether they're just sitting there processing it, don't be too concerned. Feel free to just ask, did anything stand out to you, and let them engage when they're ready. So that's the key pages. After you've finished all the verses in that episode, you end with a summary. So this is what the summary at the end of the first 18 verses says. So what have we seen about Jesus, the Word, so far? He was there before the world existed. He is God. He made everything. He gives life in himself and brings light to all people. Those who believe in him become members of God's own family. The Word came to earth as a man. He doesn't bring rules, but grace and truth. And John claims that we can know God personally through Jesus Christ. I'm not sure about you. I don't know if I've ever had a 20-minute conversation, gospel conversation, that's packed that much of a punch. Really, the first 18 verses of John is loaded with a lot of really good stuff. We hear stories all the time of someone who's called themselves a Christian. They'll go through the first episode of the Word 1-1, and at the end they'll say, wait, are you saying that Jesus is God? So often you find people find all sorts of things surprising and interesting. On the right-hand side of the summary page, you'll just see a couple of key quotes. So for example, when it says, he was there before the world existed, verse 1, it just has a little snippet of verse 1 there. So if your friend wants to pick up on any key points, you can chat then as well. At the end, there's a summary, a discussion prompt that says, how does this introduction compare to what you had thought of Jesus Christ? Now, depending on how comfortable you think your friend is, you can either ask them directly or you can let them have that as a question that they can take home and think about that week. Depending on how you're feeling it's going. Right at the very end, there's all the verses put together. So far as you've been catching up, you've been going through a couple of verses at a time. At the end, you put it all in one big chunk. Typically what I'll do is, when I'm catching up with a friend, is we'll read through that again, we'll read through it in our head, and at the end I'll ask you again, did anything stand out to you? Sometimes they say, yeah, wow, when you put it all together, it just makes so much sense. And sometimes I'll be like, no, I'm all good. Again, either way is okay. At the end of the episode, you can ask two questions. Did you enjoy that? And would you like to do it again sometime? Did you enjoy that? And would you like to do it again sometime? What we find is that did you enjoy that is a really great question to ask, because you, as the Christian, are often feeling like you've gone out on a bit of a limb and you're not sure how your friend went with it. And what we find is overwhelmingly people say, yeah, I did enjoy that. And that's encouraging for you as a Christian. A lady came to one of these sessions a couple of months ago. She had a catch-up with her friend. She called me up and she said, John, it was just so awkward. And I said, oh, well, what did your friend say? And she said, oh, yeah, she said she really enjoyed it. It was a good example to me that even though the Christian might feel really awkward, the non-Christian friend really enjoyed it. So it's a good question to ask. And secondly, would you like to do it again sometime? As I hinted before, 80% of people come back and say, yes, yeah, I would. So a bit of a summary. You've got John's Gospel with verses and notes to guide the conversation. At the end of each page, you ask, did anything stand out to you? And there's a summary page at the end that highlights the key points. Also, you might have seen that I have a booklet here, but in the email that I sent out earlier, I gave a link to the PDF versions, the digital versions. All of them are free. I'll tell you how to get them at the end, but they're really great for sharing online. maybe I'll get to it later, but there were many encouraging stories of people becoming Christians through reading with somebody over Zoom during COVID. I think there was at least 2 or 3 stories that I've heard where a friend read with another friend using the word one-to-one, using Zoom, and that friend became a Christian. So certainly a good thing. We have a bit of a guide. If you're not super tech savvy, we have a bit of a guide as well to help you get it set up. And there'll be an option for you to ask for us to send that to you at the end. So the Word One-to-One offers you God's words with helpful questions and answers and notes to guide conversation. They're in bite-sized chunks to digest easily and celebrate together. And it's with a non-intimidating look and feel that you can read anywhere. I think I forgot to mention, episodes usually run about 30 minutes. So if you think you'll catch up with your friend for 45 minutes or for an hour, it fits really nicely in there. 30-minute chunk, and that's about it. Yeah. What we like to say is we can't all be Bible teachers or all be the pastors up the front, but we can all be Bible sharers. We don't have to be professional evangelists. With the Word One-to-One, we can just turn the pages. We can be a page turner, and we can share God's word with people. Any questions on any of that before we dive into the next section? Okay, that was a lot of me saying a lot of things at you, but now we're going to go into a big interactive time. It's my favourite time. It's stories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a number of stories, stories of people who've actually used the Word One-to-One, and while that's happening, if you've got a pen and paper handy, if you're a scribbling type of person, write down what you learn about God, the Bible, and people from the story. So listen carefully to the story and write down what you learn about God, the Bible, and people. I'll give you a couple of seconds to open your notepads and get ready. Okay.
Oh no.
Here is story 1. Peter became a Christian later in life, when he was around 28. Since then, he's been scared to share his faith with his unbelieving friends because he fears rejection. However, Peter learned about the Word One-to-One and how easy it was to use, and committed to asking someone to read with him. He asked his mate Tom, and to his surprise, Tom said yes. They now catch up each week at the local cafe for lunch. After their first catch up, Tom said, "I never realised how interesting the Bible was, and wanted to read more." As Tom's interest in the Bible grew, so did Peter's passion for sharing his faith. I'll give you 30 seconds now to scribble some things down. Okay, after 3 or 4 stories, we'll come back and share our thoughts together. Here's another story. In April last year, Melissa went into hospital. She was there for severe depression and was admitted into a secure ward with 5 other patients. It was a fairly bleak place, filled with an aura of hopelessness. However, in the midst of this, she found hope in God. Throughout conversations with other patients, Mel had mentioned her hope in God, which led her to asking them if they'd like to read the Bible with her. She was worried because she'd never asked anyone before, but she ended up asking 4 people. And 3 of them said yes, with the 4th person agreeing to come to church with her, but not reading the Bible quite yet. I'll give you another 30 seconds to scribble some thoughts down. Okay, here's another story. 3 years ago, Jeff asked Aaron if he'd like to read the Bible with him. He said no. But they kept hanging out. Jeff focused on being a good friend. About a year ago, he went through a really hard time. And while spending some time with Jeff, Jeff asked him if he'd like to read the Bible with him. This time he said yes. They'd meet in a small room each week, like a dorm room, and a few chapters into John's Gospel, he said, "If this story is true, this changes everything. Now I want to figure out whether it's true or not." Since then, he's asked to stop reading again, but Jeff still keeps in touch, and Jeff still sees God working in his life. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Feel free to unmute yourself and share about anything you learnt about God from those stories.
Josh, you want to mention? That he connects people and provides opportunities to share Jesus with them.
Were there any particular stories that stood out to you?
Every single one of them. Placed people in different situations or different friendships, that they might have that conversation and work through many of them.
God's relatable to even those that don't yet know him. Like there's this, it seems particularly when it comes to suffering.
Yeah. Did you find that from a particular story or a couple of stories?
I would say particularly what stood out was the hospital one for me, but also the last story where, the opinion of the friend changed when he went through a lot, and that's when all of a sudden that was a draw card for him. That was almost like, well, if God is true, then there's something to this. And obviously one of the truths about Jesus is that he suffered for us and that he understands that. And I think that is a draw card. I don't know. I just personally, with myself as well, just that he is relational. Yeah. I don't know.
It's helpful. Yeah. I think it's counterintuitive. I think we often think people who are suffering would be the furthest from God. Not all the time, but often we see it's the other way around. And maybe it's like we were talking about at the start, it's because the world is failing them and they think maybe there's something else or something more. Yeah. Something different. Yeah. What else do we learn about God?
For me, God was the topic I struggled most on to see in the three stories. But in the third story, I thought he was patient. I could see patience as was it the friend was challenged and then he didn't want to read it, but then he was, anyway, I'm trying to remember. The third story, I saw him being patient. That's what I took down as a note. Yeah.
It's something we see all of the time. 40% of the people that I've asked to read with me, so I've asked maybe about, asked about 10 people, and 4 of them have said no, but then have come back later and asked to do it. It's pretty amazing. It's not always right now. Yeah. What about the Bible? What do we learn about the Bible?
Well, I'll go because I've got more notes. From the first story, I got people do want to read it. You know, they are interested. And the third one, I've got it challenges people.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Do you grab anything else, Mitch?
Changes your
Change. Mitch, you wrote down it changes your life. Life changing.
Yeah. I'll quickly share one of my stories. I had a friend named Andrew. His whole life, he said, I'm a Christian, but obviously didn't live that way. We met in school, and so all through school, yes, I'm a Christian, but obviously didn't live that way. And we started reading the Bible together, as good Christians mates do with each other. And through doing it, we got to the section where Jesus came into the temple with a whip and overturned the table of the money changers. And after that, he was like, wow, I didn't know Jesus could get that angry. I realize now that I can't just give Jesus scraps of my life. He wants the whole thing. I realize I'm not a Christian now, but I really want to be. And so, ironically, him realizing that he wasn't a Christian anymore actually brought him closer to God than he ever was before. Yeah. So in that sense, the Bible, for me, sitting there, that was a pretty powerful change in his attitude. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, what else do we learn about the Bible?
You guys.
So I think it's from the third one, how, through this, when, I can't remember the name anymore, the third story, when the friend, he was going through a lot and he came back to him to read the Bible, how he responded after reading the Bible, like it makes, the Bible is the one that makes people or non-Christians more curious about God. So, as they read, they will, so I don't know, I would say intriguing.
Yeah, all right, compelling.
Yeah, that's helpful, and I think we see that just by the sheer number of people who are willing to come back and do it a second time. 80% of people willing to come back shows that there's something engaging. This is the last month where we're running with this material. We're actually just about to upturn our whole program and include a lot of stories from real Bible sharers. So sorry to tell you you're missing out, but if you come back next month, you can see it. But there's this really beautiful story of a Chinese girl who came to faith last year, and she said in the first 18 verses she was hooked. She just wanted to see what happened next. She wanted to learn all about this Jesus guy. He was just so compelling. And encouragingly now she's one of the ladies who's reading the Bible with her mum now, who's in mainland China, and they're reading using whatever messaging platform they use. They're reading together. Let's talk about people. What do we learn about people?
People can surprise us. And we might assume, like you might assume how someone reacts or have preconceived notions. Particularly, I remember one of the stories. One of the people that was asked in the hospital didn't want to read the Bible but wanted to go to church. That kind of stood out to me, because my preconceived notions is that someone's more likely to want to read, but that's not, I guess, just because, I guess every person has different preferences, and we shouldn't assume how someone's going to react to, something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think we'll hear some more stories later tonight about that as well. Yeah. What else do we learn about people?
A no is often a not yet.
Yeah. No is not, certainly not never. Yeah. Often. Yeah. We'll hear about that in a minute. Yeah, it's very, very, very true. Any other? Go ahead.
I guess also that people can say no, so it's not like asking them is some pushy, manipulative thing, because they can say yes or no, and it's a great thing to give them the chance.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to say is people are interested. They're way more interested than we think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep saying we'll hear that in a minute. We may as well just move on and then we'll hear it. But that's absolutely true. You'll hear concrete stats that we have. I'm an engineer, so concrete stats speak to me. Stories are beautiful too, but I think stats tell a story as well. But you're very right, Matthew. In fact, the fairly consistent number that we see around Australia is 1 in 5 people say yes. So if you ask 5 people, you'll find that 1 person will say yes. And often, as you heard from me earlier, often maybe 1 or 2 of those people will actually come back later and say yes. There's been quite a number of occasions where someone has committed to ask 5 people after coming to a course like this, and they find themselves the very next week with 3 people to read with. That was my experience. When I first came to training, I went and asked 6 people, and 3 of them said yes. I didn't know what to do with myself. Which is encouraging, and I think that can be concerning because we think, well, that means 4 no's, but as we heard, no certainly doesn't mean never. It's kind of like we're giving our friend a doorway to Christianity, and they can choose to either walk through it now by giving you a yes straight away, or maybe 2 or 3 years later they can come back and walk through that door. I'll actually share 2 quick stories of some people that I asked. One was Louis. We were eating lunch together. We worked together as colleagues. We're talking about God stuff. And I said, do you want to read the Bible with me? And he said, maybe. And I thought, okay, that's a no. Okay, that's all right. Anyway, a couple of months later, we were driving home from a work event together. And he said, you know what, John, I think I'm ready to read the Bible now. There didn't seem to be anything that prompted that, from my perspective anyway. It was just a change in him. But this is something amazing. We actually read through all of John's Gospel together, and this is what he said at the end. He said, before I read the Gospel of John, I thought that Christians had some big problems in their faith. But now I see that they have really good answers. The Bible has really good answers. This is what really hit me to my core. He said, it just makes me wonder why my Christian friends haven't shared this with me before now. He wasn't necessarily someone who was asking for his Christian friends to share with him beforehand. But once they had shared, he was wondering, wow, this is really powerful stuff. I wish someone had told me earlier. Yeah. Another quick story. Another guy I worked with, Owen, we were driving home from a work event, and I said, hey, Owen, I'm a Christian. If you ever want to ask me anything, I'm happy to chat. And he turned to me and he said, John, I thought you knew what I thought about Christians, or Christianity. I hate it. I think it's terrible. Never talk to me about this again. We were really close mates. We started a company together. We're really, really close. He's a really chill guy. So to have such a violent response from him was a real shock. And I thought, this is sort of worst case scenario. He's gone nuclear. There's no way back from this. So we didn't chat about it. We didn't chat about it for years. And then one time we were in a pub having a drink together, and out of the middle of nowhere, he said, John, I've always had this question. What's the difference by salvation by faith versus salvation by works in the Christian faith? Out of the blue. So I don't know what God did in his heart, but obviously something. So no is not never. 1 in 5 say yes. Be encouraged by that. So how do we actually ask our friends? It doesn't have to be complicated. Really, there's 2 things that we think are really important. A clear invite and a small ask. I'll give an example of what that looks like. Just look at the second line here. Sorry, it's a bit cluttered, but just look at the second line. Would you like to grab a coffee and read a little bit of the Bible with me? It'll take about 20 minutes, and if you don't like it, we don't have to do it again. So it's really clear. We're asking them to have a coffee and read the Bible. We're not asking them to have a coffee and then bring the Bible in halfway through. We're clear up front. Let's have a coffee and read a bit of the Bible. But it's also a small ask, saying it's going to take 20, 30 minutes, and you don't have to do it again. That's really setting up that doorway for your friend, where they go through it now or they go through it later. You've set it up for them. And I think, honestly, if your friend gets really, really offended, it shows that there's something happening deep in their heart. I don't think it's wrong of you to ask them, even if they do get really offended. Maybe that's controversial. You can feel free to push back on me on that, but I don't think this is a pushy or an offensive ask. Yeah, particularly if you're not bringing it up again and again. Yeah. Here's a couple of other examples. Some of my friends have really liked looking at one of the accounts of Jesus' life using these really easy notes. Maybe you'd like to as well. And of course, you can tack on, and if you don't like it, we don't have to do it again. One of my favorites, I run this course at a lot of churches. This works well for a church audience. I'm doing this course at church on how to read the Bible with people. I need to practice. Are you happy to catch up and practice once? It'll take about 20 minutes. What I'll do is I'll give you guys about 2 minutes now to, and I'll leave these on screens. If you've got a pen and paper, feel free to scribble down a couple of ideas of how you might ask somebody. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just think about how you can put it in your own words. I'll give you 2 minutes now. Okay, we'll start to bring it back together. I've had 2 minutes to think about what I said. I think we need to be sensitive as we're asking our friends, but at the same time not scared about asking our friends. Anyway, yeah, does anyone want to share some unformed, scribbled thoughts that they've had?
Well, I'm unmuted. I'd like to tell you about God from the Bible. Are you free for a coffee and a chat? My other one, would you like to come over for dinner Thursday night? Very specific. And we can talk about God and after dinner read the Bible.
Yeah, nice. Have you asked somebody something similar to this before?
Yeah, well, actually, this is a bit of a hole in my evangelism. I like talking about God, but I've not been like using God's word that much. So I think it's like telling them about the trailer to a movie and never getting them to the movie. That's what I realized in this conversation. So yeah.
I think.
But I also know when I signed up, I was trying to work out how to introduce the Bible, and so that's why I'm here. So
Yeah.
It's all kind of coming together.
I think it's a really wonderful thing. My favorite demographic to read the Bible with are people that have very firm opinions about who Jesus is. I don't need to argue with them. We just need to read the Bible. And very quickly, their preconceptions of who Jesus is shatter, and I haven't had to say a thing. It's them as they encounter the real Jesus in the Bible. Their picture of him gets clarified. It's kind of exciting. I much prefer reading it with Bible with non-Christians like that than with Christians. It's much more exciting, I think. Maybe I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, but anyway.
No, I feel like not that I'm in the way, but I feel like I'm telling them about a celebrity that I know, and they never get to meet them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Good one. How about anybody else?
Oh, I do get the privilege of reading the Bible with a few people through the week, and actually just that invite of, hey, have you ever had the chance to read the Bible with a Christian and see what it really says about Jesus? Because I just wanted to make myself available to do that. It's uncanny how many people in time will say yes to that. And so that's I do get lots of no's and some very strong no's as well. In fact, so I look out the window, my neighbor across the street really encouraged his wife to come along to church with us. And she's been coming along to church. And so a couple of weeks ago, I said to him, hey, it's been great. Your wife and daughter have been coming along to church. I just want to see if are you interested in coming along, or would you like to read the Bible? And I might be able to help you with some of the questions you might be grappling through. And he gave me a 2 to 3 minute, very passionate, no, don't ask me again. I'm not interested. And I said, okay, well, just want you to know I'm available. And if that changes, or when that changes, I'm here and ready. And he gave me another minute or two of that's not ever going to change. I said, okay, well, if you hear the girls, grappling with any questions, and you just want somebody to be alongside you to help you make sense of the questions they're thinking about, anytime, just come and grab me. And since then, I've just made a couple of efforts just at a relational level to make him know that relationship's still strong. I'm not backing away, and I think we've come through that, and it's all good. And I trust in time it'll be at some point it'll be a yes.
So that's a story of him going nuclear,
Yeah.
But you've come back from the brink.
But it's okay.
Still got a relationship.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm keen to touch base with you in a couple of years and see if there's any extras to that story. Yeah. Can you actually type that invite into the chat, and we might bring it to the next month's training. What about you girls? Got any thoughts?
Well, I've actually got a friend who's come to church, and I've given her a Bible. I gave her a Bible, and then she said, and then she saw one when she came to church and said, these Bibles are nicer, because the one I gave her was just like off the shelf spontaneously while we were talking. And so I was like, will you take a nicer one? So now I know that she has 2 Bibles. And so my plan is to, I know you've got 2 Bibles. Do you want to read it? So have you read it? I might ask her first if she's got stuck into it at all, and then if she'd like to read it with me.
Good one. Yeah.
For me, I'm part of this uni group, uni society. It's called Subbies, and it's for international students who are not Christians. So I'm one of the leaders there, and one of this girl, she always comes to Subbies, and she's really engaged. She loves, learning about Jesus through the preaching that we do. So I'm planning to ask her. So I'm going to ask her, hey, I've seen you, given interest, and you're pretty interested. I've seen you interacting during our small Bible study group, but do you want to read Bible more? We could catch up, over the weekends for a coffee, or or brunch at my place, and we could read more about it. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. That's very exciting. I think international students are such an exciting demographic. I similarly helped out at a international student group in Brisbane, and it reminds me. I say to people, read out loud or in your head whatever makes you comfortable. But here's a story of us reading out loud. I was reading with an international student, a Christian guy, reading on campus, and past us walks these 2 Chinese girls. They walk past us, and then they circle back, come and sit down at our table, and said, "We heard you talking about Jesus. can we come and sit and listen to you talk about him some more? So you don't always have to read it out loud, but yeah, that was just an amazing incident. Yeah.
I had somebody buy me and the guy I was reading the Bible with lunch because they saw us opening the Bible and said, "So you guys reading the Bible? We just wanted to buy you some lunch." And so they came over. We weren't sure what to get, so we got you each a large Macca's meal, and here you go. Enjoy the Bible and enjoy lunch. And I was like, "Yeah, does this happen to you a lot?" To my friend who's in the back, it doesn't happen to me all that much, but it's pretty neat. So yeah, praise the Lord.
That's pretty cool. I'll share one more invite. This is from someone this week, actually, who's doing the course or the workshop in Sydney. This is what he said. He said to his friend, "Hey, do you want to catch up?" I forget his exact wording, but something like, "Hey, do you want to catch up and read some of the Bible book of John while we drink some gin?" So we'll have John and gin. And if you don't like it, next week we'll just do gin. So that was his sort of clever way of inviting a friend. But his friend agreed, actually. That was a yes. He got that yesterday. His friend said yes, he would like to do John and gin and give it a go.
John and Johnny, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. I hope you've been encouraged. I think that's the main thing people walk away with these sessions from is courage. As you've seen, the word one-to-one is pretty straightforward. You just read through it, basically. So really what people need most of the time is just a bit of courage, and I hope you've gotten that. Yeah. I do recommend, though, having a bit of a read through before you first catch up, because even though I explain it on screen, it's one thing to have it explained on screen. It's another thing to actually open it up with somebody else and think through some of those details. It's not hard, but it's worth doing just once. What we've learnt, no doesn't mean never, and God is in control. A thought that I've had this week, this is some unformed thoughts as I'm sort of thinking about this and writing about this. When we think of inviting a friend, we often think we're talking to them. You know, I mean, that makes sense. We're speaking words and we're hoping they'll go in their ears and they'll give us a response. So we're thinking very horizontally. But really what we believe is that God softens people's hearts. And nobody can respond to God unless He softened their hearts. So from that, I think we can take away that really we're making a vertical ask. Really, when we're speaking to a friend, we're really speaking to God saying, "Hey, have you softened this person? Is this person ready yet?" And if the person responds, "Yes, I would like to read the Bible," then that's God's answer. Yes, I have softened this person. They are ready to go. But conversely, if the person says, "No, I don't want to do that," that's like God vertically speaking to you saying, "No, I haven't softened this person's heart yet. It's not their time. They're not ready yet." So be encouraged that really, if you get no's, that's not outside God's plan. That's very specifically inside His plans. Yeah. No doesn't mean never, and God is in control. Let's bring this to a close. Where can you actually get the word one-to-one? Well, you can get it from any good Christian bookshop. I think the goodness of the bookshop is based on whether they stock the word one-to-one. We recommend the Wandering Bookseller. Unless you live in the Blue Mountains, that's mail order online, so you can go to their website, Wandering Bookseller. They've got the cheapest prices. They work really closely with us, so buy it from anywhere, but we recommend these guys. If you want the free PDF versions, you can get them from theword1to1.com.au. After this, we'll send you out a link that'll have all of this information in it as well, so don't feel like you need to manually scribble anything down. You can follow our Facebook page. We have updates, so we're trying to make a lot of resources. So, for example, I have a 1-minute video for frequently asked questions. So, your friend says, ask you about science and God, and so our hope is that we'd have like a short post that you as a Christian can go to, and it'll give you a couple of suggested resources that you could take to your friends. So, if you want some ongoing encouragement and ongoing resources, follow us there. What's next? You've come along tonight. You've learned about the word.
That Facebook page wasn't available, was it? Can you?
I'll send it in a link in an email, actually. So
TW121AU doesn't exist.
Okay. We're taken down by the censors. We'll send a link through that works.
All right.
Keep an eye on your email. That's helpful. Thank you. These slides are, as I said, we're tossing all these slides out and starting again next month. So you've come along tonight, you've learned about it. What's next? Can I encourage you, think of 5 friends. You heard earlier that 1 in 5 say yes. So it's worthwhile thinking of 5, praying for those people, and then asking them. And you've heard a couple of ways to do that tonight as well. don't be discouraged. If you get one or two people up front that have said no, don't be discouraged. Again, we've heard that, putting out an invite that might happen now, it might happen sometime in the future, and usually doesn't kill relationships. Yeah, and then doing it when you've set a time with your friend, you just turn the pages. If you have any questions, you'll have our email address. Feel free to flick us an email. We get emails all the time. There's one lovely lady in Perth who emails us about every fortnight with the latest news. She's reading with someone in Bali right now online. She's very encouraging. Feel free to send us emails. We love it. And you'll have our email too soon. That's it. Oh, yeah, I'll leave this slide up. We'll go into questions. That's ticked over to 8:30 now. So thank you so much for coming along tonight. I'll quickly pray. If you want to leave after that, feel free to. If you have questions, feel free to stick around. I'll stick around as long as you need me to. I'll pray now. Hey, God. Thank you that we've been able to spend this time tonight together. Be encouraged how you really are working in the world, working in people's lives, getting people ready for us. So when we come to them, they're either ready to go or you tell us to move to the next person. Thank you that you help us be part of that, how it's really exciting when we're doing it. And you give us courage and gospel excitedness as we read with our friends. I pray that you'd help these people have the courage and the thoughtful, kind words to ask their friends with as well, and that their hearts would be softened. Ready to start doing it. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I'll stick around for a bit. If you have questions, let me know. Oh, I forgot to say, fill out the feedback as well. If you have a chance, if you want to, if there's something you hated, please tell us. So when we start making our new material next month, we'll have some good feedback from that. Anyway, does anyone have any questions?
We'll wave goodbye, but thanks heaps.
Thanks for coming along today, girls. See ya.
Sure, John. So the book, do I need a Bible when I'm going through John? I mean, obviously, yes, it'd be nice to have one. But if we're in a coffee shop and I've got the word, does it have John questions? Is that what I'm expecting? Is that what it sounded like?
Yes. So the entirety of the Gospel of John is in the booklets. Part of the reason for that,
That's great.
So you'll see on the left of my screen here, those are the verses of John. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the sort of conversation groups. The reason for that is we figure if you walk into a coffee shop and you've got a big hunking Bible, big study ESV Bible, and thud it down on the table, it might feel a bit intimidating. So having a small booklet is really...
good. Yeah, so good, that answers that. And how many booklets are there?
There's 11 booklets, so it breaks it up into 38 chunks. So this one's the first 3 episodes, or first 3 chunks. They take about 30 minutes. It's a bit of a slow burner, so it's not as quick as some Gospels, but we found that it's got a niche, and what I really like about it is it sets up a long-term relationship. It's not like, I think, for example, a Gospel summary like 2 Ways to Live is really great, but that gives you a 5-minute conversation or a 15, 20-minute conversation, whereas something like this, you've set up if they agree to do it and they're enjoying it, that's now set up, 9 months worth of, relationship where you're talking about God. So it's got its pluses and its minuses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert at this, and I know people often start with the book of Mark, but I've always thought the book of John's the place to start, So that's quite coincidental. Not that I don't know. I just like the theology, the philosophy more. I like it's personal taste. I know.
I think we see different people respond. The Chinese lady I talked about earlier who became a Christian recently, she loved John. She's read, consequently read through Mark and other things, but she really loves John for that sort of philosophical element. Really how we, there's no deep reason that we have John. It's not like we love John and we think it's better than the rest. I won't bore you with the history, but there's a very non-important reason why we picked John.
I'm interested.
Long story.
Don't have to.
basically somebody saw somebody else reading the gospel. It's basically the author Richard Begonnen said, I'm really bad at sharing my faith, but he saw someone else who was sharing his faith and they were sharing the gospel of John. He's like, I want to do that. I'm going to mimic what they do. I'm going to use the gospel of John.
That's
That's about as deep as it goes. Yeah.
that's right. Copy.
What I love about it, though, is it's really personal. It's an intimate gospel. Mark tells you what Jesus did. John shows you what Jesus was thinking, what he was feeling, and how he was really talking to his closest friends.
I really appreciate there's a map in there. A couple of years ago, it was I think it was at a Christianity Explored session, and which is in Mark's Gospel. But it was one of the bits that we read was the story of Jesus calming the storm, and one of the guys read that, and it starts by saying, and then they crossed to the other side, and of course we read that and think, oh, they crossed to the other side of the lake. But he was like, they crossed to the other side. Like, does that mean like they went to the spiritual realm or something like that? And he goes, what did that mean? He crossed to the other side. And I was like, oh, they were in the boat. They crossed to the other side of the lake. And he's like, oh, they crossed to the other side. Oh, I hadn't placed this in kind of on land. And in fact, even just for your encouragement. So 2 years ago, his wife registered for Christianity Explored. He came along to the first session, said, I just want to check out what she's coming along to, but I'm not interested. And we just started getting a coffee every few months. He's not interested. And I think it was 2 years later, he said, I'm interested now. And so we've now finished going through a gospel, and we actually had lunch today, and we're just about to start going through Philippians together. And he's would call himself a believer these days, and he's hungry to continue to get into God's word. So that's over 3 years now, and just so thankful for that.
Yeah.
So,
that's a great story, Andrew. Yeah.
One other funny one is this week I'm catching up with a guy who's a paralegal, and we're just starting to get into the Bible. And I said, now, as a Christian, I read the Bible out loud with people all the time in cafes, but I know you're a lawyer, so you probably read quietly in your head about double the pace I would. Would you like to read out loud awkwardly like I do, or do you want to do the legal style reading? He's like, I'm not doing the awkward out loud reading. We're doing the legal style reading. I was like, okay, well, glad to make that clear. And so anyway, it was a really good time together. So, well, anyway, just in terms of what you said before, sometimes out loud, sometimes in your head. So,
can I steal that story for future?
Please, I thought you'd enjoy stealing
I
mine.
have I think something I'm thankful to God for is my head can hold a lot of just sort of random stories that illustrate points, and so I love hearing stories like this because that'll come up in some training in the future, and I can share that story and other people get encouraged.
It's been on my heart to do more one-to-one Bible readings with people, and I'm tempted to just put something up on the notice board in the local shops. I mean, obviously you could say yes, go for it. Any advice though? Anything? I don't know what to do.
Like welcome to. I reckon so there's a couple of thoughts. One is that feedback. I'll pull up that link again. Actually, what we're doing is we are. In that feedback survey, at the end of it, it asks, would you like to be put on a register? And so maybe once or twice a month, City Bible Forum, the organisation I works for, gets a non-Christian who'll come on our website and they'll say, hey, can I read the Bible with somebody? And what we do is then we go to our group of Bible sharers, for example, you included, and we'll say, hey, there's somebody in your local area. Would you like to read the Bible with them? So you probably... chances of somebody coming through are probably fairly low, but if you're there, something we're actually doing, just an exciting thing is there's a whole bunch of people doing walk up in the city. There's an organization called Open Air Campaign. OAC. It doesn't stand for anything these days, but OAC, they do walk up and they hand out the Gospels of John. And we've just had a partnership where we put a link to that Bible reading form on that. And so if somebody gets gets the Gospel of John and they think, I can't really read through this by myself, they go to the form, they fill it in and say, hey, I'd like someone to read with, and that comes to us, and then we get someone like you or somebody else to read with them. As far as putting it in the shop, I mean, feel free to.
Or the library.
Yeah, the library. The library's a good idea. Personal invites are always powerful as well.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable to invite there's no need to go into stories, but the friends are a bit not all burned out, but you can always try, but
Yeah.
I'm like let's just go where the harvest is. Let's not worry about hassling mum and dad again, or
Maybe like it's a fair point. Maybe like groups that are really open, I find, is in like international student groups are often open, and often like if you've got a uni nearby with an AFES international student group, they're usually quite happy to have volunteers come along and help out, cook food,
Cool.
sit in Bible studies, that sort of thing. And that's often a very, once the staff get to know you and trust you, they're often very happy, if you gel with a student, if you say, hey, do you want to read the Bible some more? That's another great way to get started.
Here's one other suggestion. Don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but I have found it's coffee shops that are ridiculously busy and you could never chat with the staff, and they often have the best coffee. And then there's other coffee shops that have okay coffee, but they're just a bit quiet and they have quiet times during the day. And so I have found intentionally buying my coffee from the second type of coffee shops gives me opportunities to just have a quick chat with the barista or the owner or whatever it is regularly. And I've probably got maybe half a dozen that I have either had the chance to read through a gospel with, or am now still tomorrow I'm having lunch with the owner of our little cafe outside our church office, and because I choose some that aren't run off their feet all day, and so they're probably killing time during the day, and I'll start off first by saying, hey, I'm a Christian in the area, can I be praying for you? Thanks for my coffee, how are you going? And a few coffee shop owners have said, one in particular said to me one day, I actually don't know what to do with everything that people tell me, because I sort of say, how are you going to people, and people say, my marriage is not going well, but I'm glad I've got my coffee, or work's really, and they're like, I don't know what to do with all of this stuff that people tell me. And
they're the local priest, aren't they?
Right, that's exactly
local confessional.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'll be like, man, would it be helpful to debrief that with somebody? And I'd be happy to pray with you. Anyway, coffee shop stuff. There you go. There's a hot tip. And there might be a local you can find, or a local eatery that not the busiest one. Go to the one that wants to be the busiest one, but is struggling a bit, and be a blessing to them. So there you go. Thanks, John. That was super encouraging. And,
I'll throw in one quick story before we close it off. There's a guy in Brisbane. He's a retiree. He's a bit socially awkward, if I'm honest. He's a quiet guy, bit of an introvert, but something he does every morning, he goes for a run in his park. He heard about the Word 1-to-1 3 years ago, and we'd never heard from him since. Anyway, he came up on our books recently, and so I gave him a call and said, hey, Bill, how you doing? And he said, I'm reading with 6 or 7 people. Okay, sure. How did that happen? Can we have a coffee and talk about it? He says, sure. So he tells me a story. He goes, running every morning. If there's another bloke running in the same direction, he'll sort of sidle up and they'll start having a conversation. At the end of the run, there's a coffee shop, so he'll buy them a coffee. And, for some people, if they've been gelling well and they've been having a bit of a deeper chat, he'll say, hey, I'm a Christian. I enjoy reading the Bible with people. Is that something, you'd be interested in doing? And so he's asked 24 people, and 6 people have said yes. That might not sound great, but that's actually 1 in 4. So we heard 1 in 5 is the average. He's got 6 people. He's asked a whole bunch. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, I'm not in sales or anything, but those sort of numbers are fantastic if you're in sales. They're a bit cheery.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyway, thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks,
Feel free to keep
gentlemen.
in touch, and we'll flick you all an email soon.
John, would the
Thanks,
feedback
John.
form be on the email you send, or is that only on the? Yep.
Yep,
Great.
it will be. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's really helpful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Nice meeting you both. Thank
All the
you.
best, Matthew. Nice to see you as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You bet.